Ballard, in his live Fact versus Myth webcast, accused the Atlantic reporter of dishonestly defining and limiting child sex trafficking to just those who were kidnapped off the street, where no one knew what happened to the missing child, sort of like the milk carton kids of the 1980s.
And so she decided to define human trafficking very limited. We've talked about earlier, like the white van, the kidnappings, the cold cases, the cold kidnapping. Let's define it like that, and then I can make fun of people like OUR who are saying that there's, 2 million children in the commercial sex trade.
But it's Ballard himself who continually raises the specter of kidnappings. Like this poster, "We exist to free child sex slaves." Or, "Our job is to rescue children who have been kidnapped, who have been trafficked." It's what OUR's child rescue was supposed to have been about.
It's when a child or a person, we focus on children, but it's a child who's taken and enslaved. Kidnapped. And
sold by their own parents sometimes?
Sometimes their own parents, sometimes a different person who gets a hold of them. But it's basically human bondage. I deal every day with lost children. I see how easily they get snatched by evil people, and it is the most miserable thing on earth. I've walked into those dens where they kidnapped people, children, and forced them into slave labor or forced them into things much worse than that. We travel all over the world. Our job is to rescue people, children, who have been kidnapped, who are being trafficked. This is the biggest problem plaguing the earth. Is there anything worse than children being taken and trafficked? But there's one thing left. Children shouldn't be kidnapped. Children shouldn't be raped. Children shouldn't be exploited. That's it. That's all we got left.
Ballard went on a Spiro Agnew-style offensive against the Atlantic reporter, accusing her reporting of putting children's lives at risk, and further, without proof, accusing media outlets of reporting that pedophilia is normal.
So shame on you, people who are trying to make a thing of these numbers and try and lessen the chance of a woman or child from being rescued. It's sick, and it's interesting. Most of those outlets, by the way, are the ones that are reporting on this. Also have parallel reporting about how pedophilia is normal, and let's not stigmatize people who want to have sex with our children. It's a movement we're battling, and it's disgusting.
Finally, Ballard accused the Atlantic of leaving out his actual numbers about child sex slavery. The 27 million enslaved worldwide, 10 million sex slaves, 2 million children forced into the commercial sex trade.
So this particular article that I'm referring to decided to leave all that out because that would have ruined her story.
Again, the numbers, Ballard says, were left out. Ballard is correct. The Atlantic article did not deal with those figures. But Ballard may be lucky it didn't. My reporting did go into those numbers in great detail in 2015, 7 years ago, and again in 2020. His key sex trafficking numbers have not changed in 7 or more years. 10 million are commercial sex slaves worldwide. 10 million sex slaves. 2 million children trapped as sex slaves. Again, 2 million. 32 billion a year global industry. Still 32 billion a year. Fastest growing criminal enterprise. It's still growing. Even if the numbers and claims were accurate 7 years ago, they would still not be accurate today. But they were not even accurate then, as I reported in 2015. My 33-page report was published online in 2015. It was about Sean Reyes and the child sex slave rescue industry. There was a section in it about Tim Ballard's hyping of OUR. and about his numbers game. It went through his broken record repetition of numbers. I looked at, for example, a State Department trafficking report. That document did not support Ballard's numbers. As I reported, the U.S. State Department's 2014 Trafficking in Persons report warns news reporters about what it calls the numbers game, the same game it once played. Reporters often lead with numbers, the report says, but reliable statistics related to human trafficking are difficult to find. That's one of Ballard's so-called legitimate sources. Came out the year OUR was formed, and he certainly would have read it. Still, 7 years ago, I quoted Tom Gillen, a law enforcement human trafficking trainer. He told me, "Don't get caught up in the numbers." I hate those approximate numbers because you can make up anything you want. And the reason that they use those numbers, in my opinion, is as a marketing tool to get people to give to their cause. There are a lot of nonprofit organizations that are popping up, he said. They are coming out of the woodwork, raising money, saying that they are rescuing people and doing this or doing that. And what we're finding out is that they're not really doing a whole lot of anything. I asked Gillen about the videos some charities, including OUR, make of dramatic rescues. He said, "Those are the things that bother me. There have been quite a few of those videos that organizations produce, and then they use those to even make more money." I told Gillen that Utah Attorney General Sean Reyes went on one of OUR's missions and appeared in a promotional video. "Wow, that's scary," he responded. More than a year and a half ago, I tackled OUR's numbers again in a YouTube video report titled Tim Ballard and Ego Run Amok. I reported on OUR's unproven statements, which included statistics. I focused on a KUTV news story that cited one of Ballard's claimed reliable sources. The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime reports there are more than 20 million people currently enslaved in human trafficking worldwide, 2 million of them being children. So there they are, the 20 million and 2 million figures, what OUR and KUTV say are in the UN report. The UN report actually says, in 2016, a peak of more than 24,000 detected victims was recorded. There is no mention of 20 million currently enslaved or 2 million of them being children. It's 24,000 versus 20 million. OUR inflated the number more than 800 times. What about UN stats? I exchanged phone calls and emails with the UN's research expert on trafficking in persons, Fabrizio Sorica, in Vienna, Austria. He said, "Many things of what you ask clarifications for are indeed not accurate information that keep on being reiterated." He said there is not a global estimate on the number of victims of trafficking in persons. Sorica went on to say, "The global estimates you will see are normally referring to the concept of modern-day slavery. That is a vague term that may include a variety of different phenomena, but is not trafficking in persons as defined by the United Nations. We never make reference to such global estimates. If someone is misquoting us, that is another matter. As far as the situation in the USA, I don't think there is a country estimate. The 20.9 million is an estimate of the International Labor Organization, that's part of the United Nations, and refers to victims of forced labor, not victims of trafficking in persons. I am not familiar with 2 million CSE, but maybe this is part of the ILO estimates. Nevertheless, I think they withdrew this figure.